Okay, we're going to start. Elena, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Let's make sure it's showing. We're showing the screen. I have my partner, Elena Eldestein from Blackmore Partners. Elena and I are on the deal side of Blackmore Partners. We're very interested in deal opportunities to acquire companies and to assist executives to do so. Elena, before we get into the deal thesis, why don't you talk a little bit about what your role is here at Blackmore and how you work with executives to take them from deal thesis to acquisition?
Yes, thank you, Gerald. As you know, Blackmore was founded some time ago in 2005 with the objective to partner with experienced industry executives on creating deals with them and around them. And that's what I do, spend pretty much every day of the week. We engage with executives who may have an idea or on the one side of the spectrum, or they may already identified a company or multiple companies and created a growth plan on the other side of the spectrum. Either way, we engage with these executives to research the industry, put together an investment thesis. Sometimes we deal source. Most of the time, executives bring deals to us. We engage with business owners. We analyze the companies. And very importantly, we together create a post-acquisition value creation plan. As a result, our deals include, of course, a company or multiple companies, a plan to improve and grow the company post-acquisition to produce the expected returns on the invested capital, and we have a person or sometimes a team that has the credibility to execute the plan. And that's what a deal means to us. That's the answer to your question, Gerald.
Great, thank you. Since Blackmore is a very small boutique investor, private equity firm, independent sponsor, we have a specific type of deal flow. We definitely prefer actionable opportunities. Now, as we're going to talk about here, is the majority of private equity firms out there have extensive resources to help take your deal thesis, if they like it, and turn it into actionable opportunities. In other words, they have resources that can call investment banks, brokers, they have extensive relationships to CPAs, law firms. All of these people act to funnel deal opportunities that match your angle in the market. Now, the other reason for that we're going to talk about today is the reason for having a deal thesis. It's for how you differentiate yourself in the market to a PE firm. One executive from a PE firm, Tom Turpin of Allied Capital, he said to me, he says, Gerald, I'm not kidding. He says 99.9999% of executives that contact our firm, and I believe he says this is true for all PE firms, they just contact us, they send us their resume, and they say, hey, I can run one of your PE firms, and or they're calling us, they're emailing us, they're FedExing us their resumes. There's nothing that differentiates them. My role, and all private equity firms' role, is we're investors. We're looking for ideas. We're looking for great execs and saying, we want to work with you. Now, if you want to get our attention, he said, to get a job, a board membership, the advisor role, come to us for an idea. Then we have a reason to spend time with you. We'll spend at least 15 minutes with you on the phone or at a conference. But if they don't have that, I don't have time because I don't believe these executives understand what private equity is about, what we're here for. What comments do you have on that, Elena?
Yes, absolutely true. In fact, in my experience, thesis is the first step, and the second step is to have at least an idea of what companies to go after, and even better if you have a relationship directly or indirectly with the companies. Another comment I wanted to make to add to Gerald's statement that understanding of private equity is important. I noticed in my experience that there are really three roles. There is a buyer role, there is a seller role, and then there is a operating executive role. And oftentimes, the executive I work with would sort of play the seller role or speak to the interest of the seller, and also obviously the operating executive role. But it's really important that the executive understands the buyer role and looks at things from the buyer perspective and speaks in those terms to private equity.
Yeah, I think, Elena, let me explain it. What makes that important is we deal with executives who are advocating why we should pay exorbitant amounts of money for a company from the seller's point of view. Is that what you're talking about? Explain.
Yeah, so if price is one, then speaking about risks, sometimes executives decide not to spend sufficient time on risks, and that is something that is not looked very favorably by the buyer.
Yeah, and so risk are things that can go wrong with the deal, and I think that's so well said, Yelena. I've been on so many calls when we're presenting an opportunity to a PE firm for acquisition, and the executive is asked about what could go wrong and how he'll mitigate that, and that executive doesn't have answers for that. Well, this is a great deal. We should really do it. I can really do well with it. Well, when a private equity firm hears that, they get scared. So this is one of the great things about doing a deal thesis, as we're going to discover here, is you're going to be able to show that you can identify risk. You're going to show that you can identify market trends and how to take advantage of them, but also what can go wrong and how to mitigate each of those risks. If we say for each risk you can identify, and you want to identify risk, you want to point out things before private equity asks, because if they point it out, they immediately discount the executive. So again, this is a job interview, not only for them to put money behind you if you're trying to acquire a company, but it also is going to lead to potentially board positions or other opportunities for portfolio CEO roles, COO roles, CMO roles, CFO roles. They want to see how you're thinking. They want to see that you're thinking ahead. They want to see that you can identify risk in a particular area of expertise. Any comment there, Elena, before I move forward on the next slide?
Yes, I can add. In fact, I view every interaction that the executive has with the private equity as that mini interview, and you should really treat it as such. Every time you speak, even if we're far along in the deal process and you feel very comfortable with the private equity firm we're partnered with, it's still in a way a test. Every time you present your idea, you speak about risks or opportunities, or we're discussing a plan. And I always encourage the executives to speak about something they've accomplished between the last time we spoke with the private equity and now. So every time there is an interaction, it's an opportunity to prove that you are the absolutely best person for the position we want you to have.
Okay. I want to mention that this is a Blackmore Connects webinar. Yelena and I work on the Blackmore Partners, Inc., which is the deal side. However, Blackmore Connects, if you will, has us dump our intellectual property into the Blackmore Connects to enable executives to leverage their, I would say, build their capacity to reach out to private equity firms effectively. Blackmore Connects is a paid subscription platform for raising capital. So if you're an executive that wants to raise capital and or land PE roles, that is why Blackmore Connects was started. Should you need anything or have comments, questions, please email Shihan. You can also email me or Yelena, preferably me, and we'll pass that on to Shihan. But please make sure that you communicate with Shihan for all things Blackmore Connects. I want to mention that we have a conference November 29th and October 12th. The December 1st conference is now full. Our conferences are designed for you to have one-to-one interaction with private equity firms. With your entrance to the conference is you must have some kind of angle. This is how you differentiate yourself with private equity. Private equity is not interested in looking for executives who want jobs. If you're looking for a job, they don't want to talk to you. But if you have a deal thesis, an angle on an industry or segment where you see opportunity, now you've differentiated yourself from 99.9999% of executives. I kid you not. So our conferences are both educational. There's a working lunch, and they go from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. with, from noon to 4 is the educational sessions, and then from 4 p.m. Where you're one-to-one getting in somewhere between 12 and 25 one-to-one meetings with private equity. So how do you want to have a bio, you want to bring a one-page handout on your angle. These are the entrances to the private equity game, and that's what we're going to be working on the webinar. Are you wondering how to prepare your bio? Go to the Sue Sarkassian webinar that we did. I believe it was on July 7th. Again, all this material is up on the Blackmore Connects website. In addition, if you want to know how private equity thinks, our classic webinar is called Winning the Private Equity Game, where we go detail by detail of what they're looking for, what they look for in CEOs, COOs, etc. In addition, we have numerous, and these are just a few of the dozens of webinars up there, JMH Capital, Pine Tree, Sawmill, Rob Slee. Each of these are great prep to prepare for the conference. If you want to know more, go to blackmoreconnects.com to register. By the way, all registrations need to be approved by Shihan Chow, and you need to send your resume I think all she requires is your resume, and then she'll call you back and about if we can get you in. Shihan Chow and her group is offering a special offer to those on this webinar for the 2016 conferences that are still available, which are October 12th and November 29th. December 1st is filled, and you can see that here. Okay? She has a special offer. You need to email her for that link, okay, to save $1,000. So how does private equity think? So it's very important. Why are we talking about a deal thesis? As I said earlier, private equity wants deals. They have a pot of money that they need to invest in a short period of time. So they're looking for ideas. I would say from my experience, Yelena, because of the cost of investment bank deals being so high, increasing risk, more than ever, private equity is looking to partner with executives on ideas. What's your thought on that?
Yes, cost is one factor. Also, auctions is very competitive. As you said, there are a lot of dry powder available, meaning the capital not invested, and the prices are high. Nevertheless, the competition for good deals is very high. So private equity is interested in what we call proprietary deals, deals that don't have sell-side representation. They're not auctioned. If the second tier after that, deals represented by a sell-side broker, but these brokers are small or boutique banks that are investment banks that are not running an auction process. So that addresses the competition. Also, with proprietary deals, there is a direct access to the business owner, and versus in represented deals, there is a sort of a barrier between private equity and the business owner until the letter of intent is signed, and that barrier is the sell-side representation. Everything has to be filtered and gone through them. When we create proprietary deals, we engage private equity early on, and we work with them as a team. There's really no barrier for the investor to learn about the company, and together with the executive expert in the industry, we can provide not only the data but also the opportunity, and that's where your role is crucial as an industry expert, to identify the opportunities, and I go back to risks, opportunities and risks in the industry and in the company.
Okay. Here's the thing to keep in mind. So one of the things that on previous webinars, executives ask me, how many private equity firms do I need to know in order to score a board role, a CEO role, some kind of role in private equity, CFO role? We find it's about 200 PE firms. Why? Because the average private equity firm closes 2 deals a year. Now, there are some big outliers like Riverside. They do 10 to 12. Okay? Private equity firm also does a lot. 50% of their deals these days are add-ons. Those certainly present opportunities. However, those are rarer for the CEO roles, given that those companies are typically not being run separately. They're getting rolled up under the platform company. So the cycle, when a private equity firm acquires a company or is thinking about acquiring, the first thing they do is assess the management situation. And what does that mean? Well, is the CEO the right guy to, once they put money in, and typically it's for private capital, meaning or private equity capital, is he the right guy to professionalize it if we give him money? If the answer is we don't know, typically they bring in a chairman of the board. So your role then would be to sit on the board, and typically anywhere from 6 months to 12 months later, you take over the current owner's role. That's one scenario. Do you have anything to add to that, Elena, before I talk about some of the other timing?
Yeah, sometimes the business owner realizes that he or she is not the one to take the company to the next level. In fact, they would welcome somebody who has the right experiences and expertise to help grow and improve the company. And in that case, the executive takes the role, the CEO role, right away. In some cases, the owner wants to retire. So there are various options for the executive to become either the CEO or another member of the management team right away.
And you're not going to know this unless you build relationships with private equity firms. They're not going to by just viewing your resume. They're not going to say, "Oh, you're the right person." They might say you're in the ballpark, but they want to get to know you. So why do you need a few hundred private equity firms? Because one is deals fall apart mostly. So they might, to close 2, they may look at somewhere between 300 and 1,000 opportunities. Your goal, and this is where your deal thesis differentiates you. It gets you in the door. It gets private equity firms wanting to talk to you. Otherwise, you're just another person sending in your resume to them. So they can keep you in mind for those other opportunities. I know Yelena is currently working on something in the healthcare space. We've been for over a year, and that owner has said he wants to take a back seat. So, Yelena, if I believe you're out looking for a CEO role before we really engage much further, someone who could take that company to the next level. Is that accurate?
Yes, looking for, it's not clear in this particular deal what the CEO will decide to do, but definitely looking for experts who can take the company to the next level. And in this situation, it could be a CEO role right away, or it could be more of an advisor and board role, and until the current CEO decides to retire.
Okay.
So it really varies. I do want to add something here. What really improves the chances of the executive to get the role he or she wants is the relationship and the depth of knowledge he gains about the company or companies if the deal includes multiple, and that really makes it much more difficult to bring somebody different, somebody who hasn't been engaged with the company for the time. So I know the focus of the webinar.
What do you mean, Yelena? Talk about how. So let's say that one of the execs here today, they get their deal thesis. They're at one of the conferences, or they started talking to a PE firm, and the PE firm says, can you help us out? We like this thesis, but obviously there's nothing actionable right now, but we do have something we'd like to talk to you about. Talk a little bit further about how that relationship then evolves.
Between the executive and the private equity, or executive and I was speaking more of the relationship between the executive and the acquisition target. That was my point. If you have not only the thesis but an acquisition target, and we together spend some time engaging with the business owner, building the relationship, having trust, and really gaining a lot of knowledge, internal knowledge about the company, then you're really in the best position to get that CEO role that you want, or other role that you want, because you already have a foothold in the company, not just information about it.
So one of the things, if we were to rank, in terms of the probability of closing a CEO role, what you're saying is an executive who has not only a target in mind, but has a relationship with some of the people in that company, the owner, that puts them at the highest rank for, I would say, both a board role and or a CEO role.
That's correct. If you just have a thesis and you just have information about the company, there are still other choices for the private equity to look at. But if you establish the relationship and you're sort of first mover, you already have the depth of knowledge about the company, you're already ahead. So it makes a lot of sense for private equity to put you in the position you want.
I do notice for situations that we're working on where we have a deal opportunity but we don't have an executive, we go to our database and look at who we've met and had a conversation with before, and we start with those people. Why is that, Yelena?
are you asking why we start with people we know?
Yeah, why do we start there? Yeah, why do we start there?
Yeah, it's a human nature. It's easier to work the relationship you already have versus start from unknown. So any pre-existing relationship we have is of value to both parties. I think similarly, if we already have a relationship with the executive and they see an opportunity in the marketplace, they're likely to contact us. It's just human nature, I think. I don't know if that's what you had in mind, but
well,
we feel comfortable with people we know.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the point is that the deal thesis that I'm trying to get across, that I am getting across, is the entrance to starting the conversation to get to be known, so that there are opportunities currently passing through the PE firm that they're looking at, and or they have their eye on, or coming up in the future. We all tend to go to people we know. So if you're not doing the reach out to private equity firm, having personal conversations one-on-one at either by email, telephone, conferences like AMA, ACG, you're never going to, it's very hard to hear from them. It's a much more random occurrence. So let's talk about the type of deal theses there are. There are deal theses that are about change of control. Executive who has created a thesis to acquire companies within their specific industry. So, Yelena, let's talk about it. Mike Lorelli has talked about on his webinars. He has gone from the consumer products working for PepsiCo, and he has gone into such diverse running PE portfolio companies that are outside of his bailiwick. So, for example, he went to running a wound care company.
That's unusual.
It is unusual. In what cases, when you're working with executives, do you consider a thesis or to acquire and have them run a company that's outside of their expertise?
Actually, I'm really a proponent of focusing on what you've done in the past. I really believe that it's a huge plus to repeat the success you've accomplished in the past. And
so when you're talking about a deal thesis, when you look at their resume and you look at the thesis, what are you correlating there? What are you saying?
I really want them to repeat the success they've had. As simple as that. I don't want them to try anything new or go too far outside of the industry expertise. Obviously, there are outliers, as you pointed out, but to increase the success rate, we really need to focus on what you've done very well in the past. As I said before, our deals include company, thesis, post-acquisition value creation plan, and a person or a team who have the credibility to execute the plan successfully. Therefore, your thesis has to correlate to your success record as directly as possible.
Okay. Let's go to some questions, okay? So for those of you who I've noticed quite a few people today have come on a bit later, I'd like to have you start typing out your questions. Yelena, I'm going to start going through these. We're also going to give some examples. There's some examples in your handout section. Okay, so one of the questions is, how long should a deal thesis be? 1, 2, 3 pages?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah. What's your thought?
A few pages. It's really not the matter of the length, but clarity. And it's harder to make a very clear short statement, as you know. So the shorter the better, at least to begin with. Think about an encounter you have with someone, and you have to clearly and very quickly tell them why they should invest money. This would be your test can you really do it, and then put on paper some more details. So a few pages would be fine to start with.
So, Yelena, here's one. Here's an individual that came up with a buyout opportunity. It was too small for us. But take a look at this and tell me what you're...
Bigger, a little bigger. It's hard to...
Yeah, I probably can. Let's take a look at layout, view.
Click on zoom to the left.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'll scroll down as you... So for us, by the way, this is too small of a company, but I wanted to use it as an example.
So the first section, let me make a quick comment. The first section is about the industry, and we really should focus not only on the company, but also on the industry. And the 5 forces that I'm sure you've heard of from Porter are important framework, but definitely want to know, is it a growing or shrinking industry? Is it cyclical or not? Does it have any risks like technology risks or some other environmental risks? Does the industry have certain dynamics that are current and you want to capitalize on? What's the competitive landscape looks like? Is this more of a monopoly, oligopoly, or is it more of a highly fragmented industry? Are there any new customer needs that are unmet or new customer expectations that maybe have been set recently? So that is really important section and should focus on the industry, not on the company.
Okay, so Yelena, if you look here, you can see the key trends, right? Again, this, by the way, folks, private equity in general, many of them, or I would say most, are happy to get started with a conversation with a one-page format like this. Yelena is pulling it apart a little bit more, but to start a conversation with the private equity firm, this is good enough, but they're going to also, when they talk to you, they're going to drill down into some of the things that Yelena is bringing up. So what do you think about the trends here? What goes through your mind? Now, this is all the deal theses I'm putting up were anywhere from 5 to 10 years old, but, just if your thoughts.
Yes, so I guess some of these are good. I prefer, again, if you can start with, this form, by the way, is quite good. However, if you can articulate the opportunity in a short conversation, imagine we met and we have 10 minutes to speak. Can you describe this opportunity to me in such a way that I want to learn more?
Perfect.
There are, I'm not a fan of many bullet points. There could be a supporting information, but to start, to think of executive summary, a big statement, why this industry is attractive for investment, why you're focusing on particular type of company. If you already have a company identified, what's the reason for this company to exist? Sometimes there is none, in fact. What is it? Are you trying to say your thesis?
Yelena, that's a great comment. What you're saying, I'd like to further refine it. We get deals in which these companies are nothing but a me too. There's nothing unique, nothing differentiated about it. There's no stickiness from the customers to the company. There's no reason for that company to exist. It will be eaten by someone else or it will be put out of business. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sometimes industries grow. For example, oil and gas industry have been growing for a while, and there were so many companies started, and they were started on this growth way, but they really have no reason to exist. So that's another point of view. And we might be looking at an industry that is in decline, and there are so many companies there who shouldn't exist or even on the rise, and there is really no long-term prospect for the company to exist. So that's one lens. Another lens, kind of somewhat opposite, is a company could be a diamond in the rocks. So it could, in fact, be not so great today, but you've identified an opportunity there that you can, using your expertise, you can really take the company in that direction. It's not a bad thesis because in that case you don't have to pay for the greatness and differentiation as an investor. You can capture that value all for yourself. So it is possible to focus on a company that is not great today, but has that potential that you can leverage. But you have to be, again, very clear about what that potential is and why and how you're going to leverage it.
Just a note for folks listening, up on the Blackmore Connects under articles, you will find dozens. We have dozens of different examples to inspire you to go ahead and create that. So again, there's no one right way. The goal here is to have a quick 10-minute compelling story for the PE firm. Later on, they will want to see more data. They like to see how you think. But I do want to say many execs that Yelena and I run into, they're not that good at writing. So, we do the writing for them. Is that your experience, Yelena?
Yes, it's a very interesting phenomenon. I work with great executives who have outstanding track record, but have somewhat of a difficulty putting their thoughts on paper.
So, and why I mention this is private equity in general knows this about you, and they're happy to listen to you more, but you have to have that rough outline on the opportunity, and it helps you codify your thoughts. And up on the Blackmore Connects website under webinars, you can pull down all those examples. There are literally dozens upon dozens, everything from detailed deal thesis to the very general type ones, all valid depending on your what you're talking about. Okay, I'm going to go to some other questions. Does the thesis project my idea, or is it supposed to be once you get the details of a deal? So does the thesis protect my deal, or is it supposed to be used? I'm not sure that I understand Rick's question. So there's different types of deal theses, Rick. One is it's just about the general direction that you see for an industry and a trend, and what that indicates that you should acquire. Once you have a target in mind, you would do a much more detailed example. I'll show you right here. Let's go to, you would do something like this. So here's a deal in which the executive put together, I think back in 2009, we were working to buy a Canadian oil field production safety specialty equipment and vehicle services. There it is, the Bulldog Hydrovac. We lost the deal, unfortunately, but nevertheless, we took the details that we got from the owner, and with the executive's help, this executive had done lots of acquisitions. He was really great at working with. But with the executive's help, we were able to take the financials, give a quick executive summary, and here's what Yelena was talking about. Once you have a target in mind and you have data, you want to immediately start identifying your high-level summary, risks, success factors, and mitigating strategies. This executive was just fabulous at doing that. So he talked about, real quick, went right to the risk. That's what private equity firms want to know. What's the risk? And then what are 3 different ways you're going to mitigate that? And that's what this executive did. He took every risk, and then what he did is he came up with strategies to mitigate risk. Any comments, Elena, on what I'm saying?
Yes, so risk for sure is really important topic to discuss. Sometimes executives refuse to address the risk. It's been.
Well, let's take that for a moment. The moment an executive refuses to address the risk, I know what I do is I want to just end the conversation, because if this person can't address the risk, lenders of any type are not going to want to deal with this. They're going to not feel confident. What's your thought?
Yes, it's sometimes it's just a deal breaker because in the reality there are risks that are that exist in the industry. There are risks that exist within the company, and there are risks that don't exist, but you have to anticipate them, because definitely things change, and with change, we should anticipate some risk. If you don't think in those terms, you're not really playing the role of the buyer. And I go back to what I said earlier, there are 3 roles, and as an executive, you really have to be able to put yourself in the shoes of all of them. And oftentimes it's more of a seller and the executive role that I see played, and it's extremely important for many reasons to put a deal together, to build a credibility with private equity, to really put yourself in the shoes of the buyer. And as a buyer, the investor, you are concerned about risk. Risk is an inherent part of investment, and it's really important to look at from the buyer's perspectives on things. Another example is that related to risk is you might be excited about certain aspects of the company, but again, from the perspective of the company or seller and perspective of the executive, but not as a buyer. For example, the high EBITDA margin. Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? It's definitely a great thing for the seller. It's a great thing for the executive, because it's better to run a profitable company. You have cash flow you can invest. But from the buyer, you have to really look into detail. If company is perfect, where are the improvement opportunities? If the company is really efficient already, how does the buyer make the return? So that's another example of how you should really think and look at the opportunity, including the industry, not just the company, from the buyer's perspective.
That's great. Here's some other questions. How specific does the deal thesis need to be? Does it have to get inside the industry, down to the individual competitor or enterprise level, or can it be at the industry market level? Well, Stephen, the answer is it depends. If the goal here of a deal thesis at this point in the game, especially if you're coming to the conference or you're trying to market and expand your funnel of your relationships with private equity firms, is to get a meeting. And when you have the meeting, if it's going to go beyond 10 or 15 minutes, you're going to probably need more details at a later date. What's your thought, Elena?
I actually believe there has to be detail, but it's not about you creating the detail. If you've been in the industry for 20 years, you really know it well, and that's where the detail comes from. It's really not the data points that you should have, but deep understanding of the industry dynamics and opportunities. That's really what matters. The data points can be acquired or found. If you claim you're an industry expert and you cannot speak about the competitiveness of the industry, competitors in the industry, opportunities, risks in the industry, then you're really not an expert. That's my point of view.
Okay, great. I have an executive, Rich, who has a question. Can I suggest a thesis for a $1 billion plus segment of a larger corporation that deals with products and services which I have been heavily involved with for years? I have not discussed the possibility of an approach with anyone in the firm. Do I need to make an approach before I mention it to a prospective funder? So, Rich, we don't have if you're talking about a carve-out, I don't know if that's what you're talking about. You're trying to carve out a segment of a larger corporation. So what we would recommend is that you talk to a prospective funder first. The reason is they can coach and develop you to be able to approach whoever the seller is in a way that can increase your odds of getting it carved out if you're talking about a carve-out. Yelena, your thoughts with that little bit of information?
Yes, 2 points. One is there will be a question, why do you think, again, if we're talking about carve-outs or sale of the entire company, especially if it's a public company, or could be private, established, large company like you're describing, what would be the reason for the owner or the corporation to divest if it's a carve-out? You have to be clear about that. And it has to be value to both the new buyer and the existing owner. Then the second point is if it's especially a public company, it would make sense to approach the management together with a reputable private equity firm. And that's what I typically do. If I speak to an executive who has a carve-out opportunity, then we do develop investment thesis, and we really figure out why, if there's a good chance, and why the corporation will want to sell. And then we would choose a private equity fund that is reputable, is large enough, is known to be an expert in that particular industry, and approach the corporation together.
Okay, here's another person, Randall. Randall says, I'm using Blackmore Connects, and I'm using the thesis format now, of which I'm grateful. Before, we mentioned protecting ideation to PE by the use of vague terms. At what point do we go into details? Randall, we always recommend that you start at a high level, and if private equity says they want to know more, what we always do, Yelena and I always sign an NDA to protect you. That's our first step. Any comment there, Yelena?
Yes, NDA is the way to protect, especially if you already have targets in mind. I would not disclose any target unless you sign an NDA, because yeah, go ahead.
So here they are. Let's imagine, Randy's at the conference, and he has a paragraph. The PE firm has a paragraph. He's talking about his idea. The PE firm is not going to just sign an NDA. They're at the conference to go more in details. What can he say in 10 minutes without, having to do an NDA? Because that will follow up in the next conversation post-conference with the PE firm.
I wouldn't worry about identifying clearly the opportunity in the market. I think that is something you should do. Get them interested in your market or better yet in the niche, whatever niche you're really addressing. And then focusing on, so that's the first thing I would do, and I would explain why this industry is attractive for investment. Second, I would speak about your success track record in this industry. Together, these 2 points, I believe, will be interested enough to take the next step. That's what I would do.
Great. Here's a question from Chris. It's a great question, Chris. We hear it often. The time has come for me to be the top manager of something. I want to find something I love that I can build a team that succeeds. I want to know how to find the right opportunity. Well, Chris, certainly I recommend going to Blackmore Connects. Email Shihan for that link to get free access to the material. We have all sorts of material to coach you in doing that. But in addition, what you want to do is you want to start off with, what do I know? What industry and segments do I know? And then who do I know in that industry? And you want to start reaching out to them about buying them. Now, with regards to what do I say to these owners, well, that's go to Blackmore Connects. The material is there. And on how to approach in detail how to move a seller from passive to interested, we've got it there. The other thing that you can do is, Elena, go ahead, and you can answer the part 2 of that or add on.
What can you do? Yes, so identify an opportunity in the industry, figure out what kind of company would benefit from the current dynamics in the industry, and start looking for this kind of company. Start building a relationship with the owner. So that's, I guess, as simple as that. You really need to find that opportunity in the industry and find that company you want to run.
So this is the thing, Chris. This is if you want to have a high probability of being CEO of that deal and getting salary, bonus, a big chunk of equity, you want to find the deal yourself. Now, the October 12th conference, you want to bring some idea to them. If they like the idea, most of these private equity firms have staff. There's 15 to 30 people in these PE firms. They will put their staff to work to find deal flow for you that fits that. However, if you just leave it up to them, they will lose interest with you. You still need to show a PE firm that you can do heavy lifting along with them to uncover opportunities. Why is that important? Once you're running a deal, you're in charge of a deal opportunity, you're going to be doing that anyway. Once you do the basic blocking and tackling of professionalizing this company, the next step will be doing add-on acquisitions, and you can't wait to be thinking about your add-on acquisitions 18 months early. You want to be thinking about those today, and you want to build relationships with owners today so that when the time you're ready to add them onto that platform is they're ready to go with you. They've watched you. They've listened to you. You've wined and dined them. This is a behavior that is in demand by private equity, deal after deal that we're looking at. We're working on a deal that has lots of add-on acquisitions, and our PE firm was asking the executive, what experience do you have with M&A? What can you do to bring in more targets? That's a key requirement today to demonstrate your willingness to, if you will, build cold relationships into warm relationships. Now, the great thing is, if you're an industry expert already, you have warm relationships, or you go get them. Elena, any add-on comment?
No, well said.
Okay, I have Elena, a comment from Ken, who we were just talking about before our call today. Ken says, you're right on target. I'd like to get some samples of what is considered a good deal thesis and be able to adapt the ones I've been working on in PowerPoint? Well, Ken, you already heard the answer. They're up on, I know you're a Blackmore Connects Braun members. It's already up there for you downloading. I'll get more up there, or I won't, but Shihan will get more up there in the coming days. I just sent her 30 more examples from the vague to the very specific to inspire your efforts. Okay, here's one. Lute says, I'm interested in learning about the tips for landing a board role for private equity. Well, what do you have to say, Elena? We always consider board role members for our private equity play. How do you start? How do you answer that question?
How do you generate board roles? It's a little bit tougher, but it might be the same, really the same path is you create a thesis, you identify companies, and the more, I just want to underscore one thing that I think implicitly has been identified already, but you need to have leverage. And you need to look
leverage
at
with who? With whom?
With private equity.
Yes.
If you know something they don't know, you have the kind of experiences that are unique. You have a relationship, a trusting relationship with the business owner, and they don't. That's your leverage. You have to build your leverage. If you have leverage, you can negotiate any position you want.
There you go. So private equity firms are putting 1 to 2 board members in all their new acquisitions. So if you don't have a relationship with a private equity firm, you're not going to get board roles. If you don't have a if you just have, the average executive has only 5 private equity firms they know. And what I find out when I ask them, well, are they in your area of expertise? They go, well, no, they're all over the place. Well, then you're not going to get a board role. You've got to build up your funnel. You've got to do a reach out. You've got to go to the ACG conferences, the AMAA. By the way, ACG, you have to get someone to get you in, because if you're not part of the private equity community, find someone who is and become a member, and then go to the conferences across the U.S. and get out and meet people personally. Get yourself a list of private equity firms in your industry, the segment you know, and start reaching out to them, or it won't happen. The private equity firms go to people they know first. They don't even use a lot of recruiters because they want to go with someone they trust. So that's really key. Someone said, I'm on the, this is Rich, I'm on the webinar to learn how to access the PE arena again. I had rescued a company for an investor several years ago and hope to pursue a similar role. Well, great place for you to be. Stephen says, I'm trying to determine whether further engagement with Blackmore will help in the future of PE funding opportunities. Mike says, thanks for these ongoing webinars. I'm participating because I'm interested in learning how to work with private equity, proposing a deal, co-investing, and leading companies to success. Well, Mike, I like that way of thinking. Reach out to us. We like that idea. We want you to propose a deal. We want to co-invest with you in the deals. Elena and I, in all of our deals, we're investors. We always bring in a lead investor, and that is either a private equity firm or a mezz fund. So why am I here? Or a family office. Yeah, we work. We're really growing our roles with family offices. Here's Rich. He says, I'm here because EDS, ACS, and CTG, I've acquired over 30 companies and built divisions. I want to get back into this exciting field to build companies again. Well, you're in the right place. That's why these webinars we have so much to cover. How to get on the PE firms for turnaround and C-level. Max, it's the same thing. You got to show your expertise. You got to develop an angle. That's your calling card. Without it, they don't want to talk to you. Go to conferences, Max. I would do that. I would like to learn steps for getting a board position. Well, Neil, we've been talking about it. Great. Private equity deals from Rick. Private equity deals are the most potential opportunity for me to showcase my talents. I would like to find out how to get partnered with a group that can turn me loose. Well, Rick, if you're the right kind of guy, they're looking for you. Explore the other webinars we have up on Blackmore Connects. Get yourself to conferences. Get yourself to the October conference. Those are some of the ones that we do. Here's another one. I'm engaged with less than $10 million company with excellent upside potential for organic and acquisition growth. Since this is smaller than Blackmore's targets, what are my most viable options? I also bring very relevant operating experience to the table. So, Elena, here's a person who wants to buy out a company less than $10 million. My first answer to you, Jeff, is you want to get some private investors. Probably you need about a half a million to $1 million, and then go get mezzanine funding for the rest. What's your thought, Elena?
Well, first of all, in private equity, we look at EBITDA, not revenue. A $10 million revenue company could be within our range, depending on the EBITDA margins. So that's my first comment. The second comment, if you believe there are opportunity to consolidate in the industry and you know that one small company that might be, or smaller, there might be another of a similar size, or you may think about a larger platform. So I would look to create a bigger deal if it's too small. However,
very good.
It's a small company, but you really believe that next year it will hit the mark or enter our parameter range, then we would be interested to hear about that as well.
Good. Here's another one from Pat. Pat says, I'm working as an advisor with a startup looking for $3 million. Market spaces, independent grocery stores, etc. Well, private equity doesn't do startups, Pat. So you want to take the thesis on this business to the market to secure investor funds. Does this make sense, or am I out of sync with the process? So you want to go the VC route. You can reach out to Shihan. We do have a VC database, and you can reach out to Shihan and talk to her about getting access to that. So you're doing the right thing. You're putting the 5 forces, but reaching out to VCs, it's like anything else. You got to get on the phone. You got to present your thesis. You got to pound a lot of dialing, pound the telephone pad, and you're going to need somewhere between 50 and 100 VCs, and just keep cracking. Here's another person. He already left. Let's see. Someone said that the audio is cutting out. Well, there's so much more we could say, folks. And Elaine and I could talk for hours and hours. So here's what we recommend, the following. Right after this phone call, you're going to be getting an email saying the next webinar is 2 weeks from now. What we'd like you to do is use some of the examples that we put in the handout section and start creating your own thesis. Send it to myself, and on our next call, we will walk you through our thinking about it. Now, once again, at this stage of the game, the only thing that we're looking for is you could do more, but the minimum that we're looking for is to get our interest. The goal here is to develop a thesis to create interest so that you have leverage from private equity firms. The most amount of leverage that you're going to have is when you have targets. That would be a form of leverage. And then even more leverage is you already have targets and you're talking to an owner. Even more leverage is you have targets and the owner wants to sell to you. That's what we call high level of relationship. So that's always what you're trying to do. Once again, private equity who are coming to our conferences, their minimal entrance is they're looking for new ideas. They're looking to put resources to work to find deal targets. However, that's nice, but it's really great if you have relationships and you take the time to develop relationships with owners. That's going to be critical. So we're looking for you to do that on our next webinar. Let's go back, see what else I left out on the slides as in terms of final closing. Okay. So once again, why do you want to do a deal thesis? It separates you from the 99.9% of all job seekers. Now, private equity doesn't want job seekers. However, if a thesis leads to a conversation, which leads to opportunity. As what you're hearing, there's no right way to get this done. If you think you know Michael Porter, I hear from execs, Gerald, I took 15 years ago, Michael Porter's, yeah, I've heard about it. Well, I'll tell you, it's one thing to have been taught it. It's another thing to live it. Private equity firms embody Michael Porter's 5 forces. Study it. We sent you some of the basic links for that. Go to the Blackmore Connects webinars for quick webinars on Michael Porter and everything you want to know. You can get access free by contacting Shihan at whatever her email address is, SC, okay? Communicating with private equity firms, if you're reaching out by email, keep your calls to 10 to 15 minutes if you get a meeting. These are some little tips. Your homework, get out the one page, become a bronze member for free, go for 30 days, watch Winning the PE Game, watch the Post Capital Partner webinar, JMH Capital Partners, and if you're not thoroughly fluent in Porter's work, rewatch those links to Michael Porter. That's it for today. Elena, anything in closing?
I leverage your experience, leverage your success record, or leverage your relationships. You have a lot, and your network is much larger than you think. That's what I've discovered. When you start researching opportunities and talking to people, you will realize that you really have connections to companies. You have connections to people you may include in your team. So really start thinking about your total network of people who may join your team, of companies that can become acquisition targets, of experts who could help you identify and evaluate opportunities. Use your network.
And last minute, Christoph. Christoph, I saw you have a build-up in the refrigeration business. I'm working with a PE firm right now in that space. We're looking for deals. That's all I can tell you. So, Christoph, reach out to me about that because we have a platform here and we're looking for more add-ons. Thank you. That's it. End of seminar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.